Okay, so what you just saw was my dinner tonight. And I ate the whole thing. And afterwards I felt satisfied in terms of taste and revitalized. Which is what you want from your food, isn't it? But anyway, this is actually a response to some comments that I've seen, and not just on YouTube, I've seen these just on the larger web, saying that veganism is the same as asceticism, which is basically a kind of religious self-denial. So, like you would see a monk or a nun lives in what is called a cell and eats very little and has no personal possessions. Yeah. So I don't know how that comes into veganism. I know that historically, there were some religious sects that didn't eat meat, that were vegetarian. But there may have been larger reasons for this, that other people who are not aware of the reasons why spiritually dedicated people do certain things. But what I wanted to really talk about is not that, but actually the fact that you can't really ascribe the word asceticism or ascetic to vegans as a whole, as a larger group. Your average vegan on the street who is just doing it for ethical reasons, right? Okay, so I'm just going to have a look at Wikipedia's definition of asceticism. Okay, so it says asceticism, from the Greek askesis, describes a lifestyle characterized by abstinence from various sorts of worldly pleasures, such as maintaining power, especially sexual activity and consumption of alcohol, often with the aim of pursuing religious and spiritual goals. So, power over the self, I think that's what that means. Christianity and the Indian religions, including yoga, teach that salvation and liberation involve a process of mind-body transformation that is effected through practicing restraint with respect to actions of body, speech, and mind. The founders and earliest practitioners of these religions, e.g. Buddhism, Jainism, and the Christian Desert Fathers, lived extremely austere lifestyles, refraining from sensual pleasures and the accumulation of material wealth. This is to be understood not as an eschewal of the enjoyment of life, but a recognition that spiritual and religious goals are impeded by such indulgence. Asceticism is closely related to the Christian concept of chastity and might be said to be the technical implementation of the abstract vows of renunciation, hence where the nuns and the monks come into this. Those who practice ascetic lifestyles do not consider their practices as virtuous, but pursue such a lifestyle in order to satisfy certain technical requirements for mind-body transformation. And then lower down, under the etymology section, it says the adjective ascetic derives from the ancient Greek term ascesis, which means practice, training, or exercise. Originally associated with any form of disciplined practice, the term ascetic has come to mean anyone who practices a renunciation of worldly pursuits to achieve higher intellectual and spiritual goals. Ascesis is a Greek Christian term, the practice of spiritual exercises rooted in the philosophical tradition of antiquity. Ascesis is the discipline of repressing lust. Originally introduced as the spiritual struggle of the Greek Orthodox Church as the style of life where meat, alcohol, sex, and comfortable clothing are avoided, the term is now used in several other relations. Many warriors and athletes in Greek society applied the discipline of ascesis to attain optimal bodily fitness and grace. The manner of life, the doctrine or principles of someone who engages in ascesis is referred to as an ascetic. Right. So, basically, people are saying that veganism is a form of asceticism. Now, I would not agree. I think veganism is very indulgent and not self-denying at all. I mean, it could be self-denying perhaps for the first couple of weeks, when you are getting over the sort of phase where you're still used to eating certain things, and you might have a slight struggle where you're like, mentally you're like, oh, but I want the ice cream, and then you have the vision of the veal calf or little baby calves being like dragged into a slaughterhouse, or or things like that, right? So there was a bit of a struggle. You might find yourself having a few internal temper tantrums, like a little baby. But the thing is, though, that once that information has fully sunk in, once it is really ingrained in your psyche, when you see other people eating a hamburger or something like that, something that other people think is like this delicacy, when you see people eating that, you're repulsed. You're repulsed and perhaps angry, even upset. You don't look at that hamburger and think, oh, I wish I wasn't a vegan, I wish I could eat that. Because really, you know where that hamburger comes from. You know where the cheese comes from that goes on the hamburger. And you don't want any part of it whatsoever. So when you sit down to your vegan meal at night, or during the day, or whenever, you sit down and you look at it and you feel, in my experience anyway, a deep sense of happiness and gratitude. You don't sit there and go, oh, I wish I was eating meat. I wish I was eating cheese. I wish I was drinking milk. I wish I was eating an egg. You sit there and you look at your food, your cruelty-free food, and you feel good. So in that sense, I think that for anyone who has ethics, veganism is actually a form of indulgence, not a form of self-denial. Thank you.